You're listening to the Really Very Crunchy podcast with your hosts, Emily
and Jason.
And today we have an extremely special guest. It's our first guest ever, Miss Ginny Yurich.
From 1,000 Hours Outside.
Here I am. Welcome to the show, Ginny.
We don't know what to do with ourselves.
Yeah, I know. We've never had a guest before. And it's something about you, and I'm sure you know this about yourself. You are really good at asking questions.
So could you interview us?
No, that is what I want to do.
I know.
That was my idea.
No, I was like, Ginny.
I got shot down.
I am going to challenge you to even just go 5 minutes without asking a question.
No, but then it might just end up silent because
She's gonna be like,
I got nothing.
Yeah. And I would apologize ahead of time. I still have no voice. This is episode number 3 that I have no voice and sound croaky.
Okay,
in
Jason,
your delightful ears.
Jason refuses to take my tinctures. Refuses.
Why?
I know. I just think that
What's in them?
herbs, whole plant, unprocessed.
They taste bad.
No, they have glycerin-based ones.
No, they
great.
taste wonderful.
They taste great.
Okay,
They taste so good.
There are alcohol-based tinctures that are like totally disgusting.
Oh.
Actually, I was going to get to this story earlier this year. Our son Alder, he had a rash while we were traveling, and I sent Ginny.
That's the younger one.
Mm-hmm.
You know the code name.
Oh, I know the whole story.
Okay.
I was a part of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I sent Ginny pictures because I don't have a lot of experience with rashes. But you have how many children?
5.
You have 5.
Lots of
You have how
experience.
many children with rashes?
So many
No,
children.
like
Yeah.
how many rashes have you had?
I've gone through a lot of rashes.
Wait, have your kids had chickenpox?
A couple have had them.
A couple?
Yeah, but didn't go through the whole family.
Does that worry
Interesting.
you?
Are we going down this whole rabbit hole?
worry?
No, we don't have to
A
go.
little bit. No,
Yeah.
a little bit. I wanted everybody to get them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but not
So-
everybody got them. We had one weird flesh-eating rash one time.
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we found out about it. We went to a public pool. And she was like,
Somebody
a little
just left their
older.
little flesh
Yeah, I was
eating.
like, why didn't you tell me this was going on with your legs?
Oh.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
And you got it?
Oh, I didn't get it. One of our kids got
Your
it.
kids got
Had it at the pool. Which,
Wait, this person.
Oh, okay. The person was your child.
the person was my kid.
You were saying you were hanging out with a woman.
No, we did we did herbal baths. We
Okay.
got rid of it.
What
I thought you
kind
said
of-
there was a person there who knew that they had a flesh.
It was my kid.
Did you know?
No, not until we got to the pool. Because it was
Oh.
like
Come
she
on,
was
Jason, keep
older.
up.
I'm
She was
sorry.
older at that time, like getting her own clothes on and stuff. So then you're like,
You don't
if
see
you
everything.
See, I'm
knew that
envisioning
these
this old
blotches
lady
were
at the
there.
pool, like, I know, I have a flesh-eating amoeba all over me. I don't care. Chlorine will get it.
Yeah, I was
My
hoping
voice,
that nobody.
It's
I was
not
hoping that
helping
nobody
me.
noticed. So I don't know.
So you might have passed on a flesh-eating rash.
Are you gonna edit this part
Did
out?
any of
No.
your kids? Did any of your
No
kids
one else
get
got it. But
Okay.
she had it for a while. We had to go to some great lengths with the herbs.
Was
to get rid
it
of
like ringworm or
No, it was just like blotches of flesh eaten away. This is starting out really great.
This is about how our podcasts
Anyways,
go.
but I'm really good at rashes.
Yeah, you have
Yeah, I'm good.
experience.
Yeah, mhm. Yeah.
So I sent you these rash pictures because I don't have a lot of experience with rashes, and it felt kind of scary
She
because
part
there's
of your
one in
rash
his
rendering
armpit.
relationship? Or
Yeah,
is it-
you're my rash rendering
yeah,
relationship. There's a rash in his armpit and then a rash like near the
on
base
his
of his
leg.
trunk. Yeah. Anyway, you said, "Do you mind if I send these pictures to my midwife?" And then she got back to me and she gave me a whole protocol to
Yeah.
follow for these rashes, and it worked.
She's wonderful.
But I sent Jason, this is what was so funny. So I use homeopathics. Are you into
Yeah,
that at all? Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm not like super familiar, but we have a few, and I mostly use like pre-curated bundles like Cold Calm
Yeah.
and the ones that are already put together. Anyway, she had some very specific, and when you buy those, they have numbers in front of them, like
3C.
yeah. So I sent Jason to the health food store with
Oh,
a
gosh.
list, and he thought that meant buy that many.
Buy what?
10,000 too.
Well, yeah. I was like, why do you want me to get 600? of
No, I
these?
think it was 60
60,
something, and you're
60.
like, you need 60
60?
of these?
How bad is the rash? How bad could it be? It must be one of those flesh-eating ones that you
Yeah,
get at the
right, right.
pool.
But that was pretty crunchy of you to send me to your midwife.
Aw, isn't that
Yeah.
the best? She's the best.
Yeah.
She helped us through the flesh eating disease.
Did she?
Yeah, herbal baths. We did herbal baths.
So is she more like your family's?
She is my person.
She's
my
your
person. I think that there's a whole lot of lost wisdom. There's a whole lot of lost generational wisdom, and you don't know who to go to because, like you said, you're like 60. See, I don't even know. I've never heard of that, and yet it's at the health food store. People are using it to get better. So
you have to tell me about. You were telling me a story once about like when you first met her, and she told you something.
Oh gosh, well, she was talking about. She must have just thought I was a total moron. I came in, I was pregnant. I had like a 1-year-old and a 6-month-old, and I'd had 2 C-sections. And I was like, will you take me on as a client? I'd like to do a home birth, which I didn't really want to do a home birth. I did not. Who wants to do that? No.
You did?
I had just had 2 C-sections, and I wasn't sure how many kids that we were going to have. So I was like, I don't know how many C-sections can you have? I don't know. What if we have 4 kids or 5 kids? So I thought that was my only option.
So what drew you to her then?
Well, her specifically, or the home birth?
Either.
Well, the home birth was because I didn't want to limit our family size based off of cesarean sections, which can happen.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you have your 3rd cesarean section and they say there's too much scar tissue, you can't have any more kids. So I didn't know how many kids we wanted to have, and you weren't allowed to try for a vaginal birth after delivery after your 2nd cesarean section, at least at that time. So my only option was a home birth, and she was in our area. She had this really cool store. She still has it online, but it was in person. It's called Indigo Forest, and it was like she had everything. She had the cloth diapers before you could get them, at Target.
Yeah.
She had the cloth diapers and essential oils, and I went there and learned how to do a lot of that stuff when we had our first, and then I came back.
Yeah, but I remember a specific story.
Well, it was all the stories because she would say all these things I'd never heard of. I came in, I just only wanted to not have more C-sections. I didn't know anything. We were like eating Hot Pockets, So she was like, well, what salves do you have at home? And I was like, what is that word? I don't know. Salve? I was like, can you spell it? And it has an L.
It's a salve.
Yes. So whenever I was recording my audiobook, I have that word in there. And I used to say salve. And the editor was like,
makes you sound studied.
No, it's salve.
Why is it salve?
Actually, no, she said it's a regional thing. Like that technically is correct.
Apparently, we're from one of those regions.
I am from the region of salves.
Oh.
Not salves.
But we live kind of close. 9 hours. That's not very close.
That's not very close. Like, listen to our accent difference.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't hear anything.
It's actually just from this one tiny region in Western Kentucky where
Paducah,
most
where they
of
call it fell.
they're all uneducated and they don't go beyond the 3rd grade. So
okay, anyway, you learned about
salve.
It's everything. I mean, one time she was like, "Yeah, my kids are sick, and I'm going to go home and put oils on their feet." And I was like, "What?"
See. I'm still not there.
Yeah, he's not into the oils, and I'm honestly not a big essential oil person.
It makes more sense if you're like breathing it in or putting it on the feet. Well, I don't get the feet.
That's supposed.
Doesn't it?
It's
go up all the way. It like sucks up to your body.
Like
that sounds crazy.
No, I've heard that your feet are the most like the quickest way into the bloodstream or something like that, unless it's under your tongue. Something like you.
Heart injection is really. If you really think about it. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
interject
so what is
all the things that you said I thought were super odd. And then like as the years went by, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. Or I'd read more about it. And I was like, oh, that's why she's doing that. And she's been a huge blessing to us.
So what is the crunchiest thing she ever recommended? Is it home birth?
I mean, I would say that would be on the far extreme of crunchy. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I didn't have home births. So we just talked about this in the last episode.
Birthing your baby in your house.
In your house. Did you do the water birth?
I tried for one of them, but it was hot. It's hard to get the temperature right. Oh. And she does talk about how, she kind of.
Let's hear it. No, I'm
about it. Well, she says when the baby comes out, they're supposed to take a big in breath, and if they're under the water.
I think
that
keeps them from taking the breath because they're still under the water. It acts as the amniotic fluid.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, it's something about their lungs. So.
Sounds like a risk to me.
Sounds like a risk. So you
I don't know enough about it.
You weren't into
I didn't do it.
Water births.
No.
Okay, so did you have them on the bed?
No, I had them on the floor. And it actually really changed my life, I would say. You know, I had Charlie was our first one. You guys do middle names. Alan.
No,
Alan.
you can do Charlie.
Whatever you want.
We do middle names.
He was our first one. So we had 2 kids and we had this first one. It took 24 hours. It was awful. I was like, the whole time I was like, take me to the hospital. This is the worst. I think the C-section is better. It's 45 minutes to hand you a baby. I'm like, thank you. I mean, if I had to choose, if there was
So you
no
don't
other
have trauma surrounding your C-section
I do have
experience.
trauma surrounding the C-section because I tried to have a birth and it didn't work. And they call it failed to progress. I'm like, can you use better words?
Yeah,
Or I got
that's not the most
disqualified.
inspiring.
I know.
That's not the most
I
inspiring
heard
version.
someone once told me when I said I wanted to have a natural birth, they're like, well, you know, you don't get a trophy if you do that. But like you actually get told you failed.
Yeah, totally.
Well, could I get a trophy?
You don't get a trophy.
I mean, should we change the language? I was trying to have our oldest in a birth center. The whole story is that I had a friend. You know, you have your friends like, and you get into these motherhood ages and they really influence you. So I had one friend who had a C-section and it was elective for her first kid. She'd had like an accident and she had back problems. So she's like, I'm going to have a C-section. And she was like, it was great. It's 45 minutes. They hand you your baby. You just go and you schedule it. I was like, sold. I'm going to do that. Well, then as it got closer, yes, as I told you, we were eating Hot Pockets. Then as it got closer, I had a friend. It was my brother's friend, and we'd all gone to high school together. And she was like, you know, there's benefits of the baby going through the birth canal, and it squeezes things out. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah,
So
like
then-
the microbiome of their whole system is affected, and
Yeah.
what it squeezes something.
Yes, I think it squeezed stuff out of their lungs. I don't know.
Oh, really? I haven't heard that part.
Maybe
That's
it's
cool.
not true. I
No,
don't.
sounds true.
Sounds right.
true.
Sounds
So
right.
I
So
changed.
wait, there's this Reddit thread that I always reference that are like, it says, Emily is clearly not very studied. So here I am, like, that sounds true. That sounds good. Yeah,
I mean,
the
they do get
baby's lungs
squeezed.
are squeezed.
It squeezes them. It's a small space.
Don't squeeze your babies.
They just squeeze naturally coming out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So they get squeezed and somehow it's healthy for them. And the lady that told me about it was a nurse. So like she was like, she
Okay.
knew what she was talking about. So then I started to do some research and I was like,
Unlike
shoot,
you.
now I know more.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I should try and do this naturally. So then I went to the birth center instead of just planning the C-section. And that's what I was supposed to do. And then I got preeclampsia. I had to collect my pee in a jug. For a whole weekend, I had to pee and collect it and take it in. And then my numbers were off and they were like, you're disqualified from the birth center.
The words
You're
they use.
disqualified.
I know,
You
disqualified.
failed and now you're disqualified.
I know, disqualified.
Wait, when was that? That was with the third one?
That was right off the bat. No, right. That was my
Oh.
first experience.
Oh, wow.
Disqualified. And then I had to get induced. And then I had failure to progress.
Yeah.
Is this one after the next, after the next?
That's called the
it
cascade
was
of interventions.
so it was kind of traumatic.
Yeah.
However,
In the
in the
end.
end, they just cut the baby out.
Yeah. And he was
here it
healthy
is.
and
yeah, but there's definitely you
There-
can see
yeah,
some health
there-
differences.
oh, you can?
Yeah, between
Long
the
term?
ones that were, I think so, between the ones that were born at home and the ones that were not. And
You think because of the C-section or because it took place in a hospital?
I think just because of the C-section and it's not a vaginal birth,
Mm-hmm.
that the vaginal birth has benefits to it.
Yeah.
And, I tried
Jason,
for
how
it.
you feeling over there?
This is great. So what's your favorite sports team?
I know. Okay.
No.
Do any of your kids like football?
So how did Josh handle your births? Because Jason, so I had both my boys in the hospital. I have told it on here. Both of my boys, I was induced, but they were born vaginally and as naturally as possible. But I was induced, which I hate. Like I
Yeah.
do not like that. That is not the story that I wanted. But anyway, Jason observed the birth.
that
And
was a mistake.
in our second one.
Some people are built for that, and
He had to sit down. Like he almost passed out. He was disturbed.
Do we get to hear more details?
things are happening that you just don't want to describe, and it's just, they had waiting rooms back in the day for men for a good reason.
So how did Josh handle it?
I mean, I think Josh did okay. We should ask him.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he wants to do it anymore, though. I mean, it's pretty intense.
So
And
you
so
guys,
I was okay. So I had these 2 C-sections at the hospital that were both failure to progress both times, and induction and all the things and hooked up and medicines coming through. And even so, I felt like that was easier. Way easier, actually. So then you do the vaginal birth, you tear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here's a story. So you tear and you have a baby at home.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what? So my midwife had a relationship with this wonderful lady who had her own practice, and we went in the middle of the night, like to go to her office and, to get sewn
stitched up.
Right? It was so much money.
Oh.
It ended up costing
Wait,
more than the birth.
you just had a baby and you had to get up and go.
Go.
Was it in the cold?
Yeah.
In the cold.
When were my babies born? March? No, June. Not in the cold.
Okay.
Not super cold.
Okay.
It was fine. So we go in the middle of the night, we get stitched up. And it was like a lot of money because it was the middle of the night. This lady had to come. It's a lot of stitches. You get numbed, all this stuff. So then
I'm listening.
Josh says, well, we were like at that stage of life when you have a bunch of friends in residency.
Sure.
You're in that stage and everyone's like in their 20s and they're going through medical programs. And he was like,
wait, you just had friends like that?
we had some.
We didn't have any connections.
We didn't have friends.
Yeah, we didn't have friends.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
we don't know what that was.
We had some, our
Okay,
friends
so
and stuff
someone
coming
was
on.
in residence.
And Josh was like, what? Can you just ask her husband if he'll do it? It'd be cheaper. And I was like, what am I supposed to go lay on their kitchen table? Like, what are you talking about? It was like
Surely
legit.
they have a sewing kit.
Right. They've learned how to do sutures, haven't they? So yeah, that was part of the process. You would go
Every time?
It happened for me every time.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Some people it doesn't happen. That's what I'm saying. I feel like
Yeah.
the C-section, all things considered, was easier. But the home birth did change me as a person. So 24 hours for the first one, which changed my whole view of my body. I felt like my body was broken. And the message, I feel like I came out of that was that my body wasn't broken. The entire birth, I was like, I'm done. Take me to the hospital. I'll be like, take me. Like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And the midwife, she would get my face and she'd be like, you're going to do it. You're doing okay. It's going to be fine. And she would go, and if we went to the hospital right now, she'd say it would take them 45 minutes to check you in. And there might be other people waiting and it's not going to happen right away. But then like 6 hours later, I would have been like, if you just would have taken me, what I said. But that one was 24 hours. The next one was 6. And the youngest was an hour and a half.
Wow.
I just learned that.
That's so
I learned that my
fast.
body wasn't broken. I learned that I could take control of my health. I learned that the small changes that we started to make with food and water and light and getting outside, all of that really matters.
Yeah.
It was cool.
So did you know definitively when your family was complete or?
We gave God one last shot and nothing happened. So
Yeah,
There we
because we're definitely not there yet. We're more like, we like our 2. I don't know if we'd like our 3 or our 4.
We would love a third.
I'm afraid of our 3rd comes in and like, man, we were happier without you. But I'm a 3rd, so I can say that.
no, that doesn't happen. You always love them.
I'm kidding.
But our
I
third,
know, I know.
our 5th was harder.
Mm.
Very clingy. Nursed till she was really old. Like even people listening to this podcast would be shocked if I said
Say
the
it.
number. No, I can't say the number
Oh, you
because she
can't?
doesn't want me to share.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, they would be like, they would go like this. Oh, if I said how long she nursed and didn't sleep through the night. And, but we did. We gave God one option, one time.
Do you ever feel like as a crunchy person, like the choices that you make your life harder? Like sometimes I wonder, is my baby clingy because I'm like worried about their attachment? So I'm nursing on demand and I'm co-sleeping. And like, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's
those-
harder for the short run. And I think it's easier in the long run.
Really?
Because
And
I think-
have you started to see that?
Yeah. I mean, you've been around our kids.
Yeah, they're great
fine.
kids. Super
They're
great.
fine. They're very confident. It takes a very long time. And I think that's what people don't tell you is it takes until they're about 7 or 8 before you really start to see that change. And that's a very, very long time.
Speaking of that, one thing I love. Okay, so you have a book coming out in May.
I do.
What is the title?
It's called Homeschooling. You're doing it right just by doing it.
I just wanted to hear you say it because I read it. I got to be someone who was an endorsement, right?
Yes.
An endorsement. Yes. I loved it.
Did I write that?
No, I'm trying to
Jason,
think of
check
what
the
it's
notes.
called.
I'm not.
Of what it's called. An endorser.
Yeah, an endorser.
We are endorsers of each
An
other.
endorsement maker.
And Jason, I will endorse anything that you write to.
Oh,
So
well,
just keep me in
thanks.
the loop.
I appreciate that.
That was actually one of his.
This is a very
New
fun
Year's
conversation
resolutions.
to watch.
Is it? Are you?
Do we want to
enjoying
talk
it?
more about? Should we talk more about writing books?
Go
Hold
ahead.
on,
No.
hold on. Okay, wait. Let's talk about this for just a minute. So, did you always have a heart for homeschooling?
Yes, I did.
Like from the very beginning?
From the very
because
beginning.
you were an educator.
Yeah, which,
You are an
which
educator,
can
but I
sound
mean,
really
like-
offensive. But I felt like it was a whole lot of wasted time, a whole lot of jumping through hoops.
Wait, I love in your book you talk about this like cart. You have had this cart.
I did.
Tell us just a little
I
bit.
had,
unless-
well, I had a cart. I mean, this is, you have your life experiences. Sometimes you're like, well, that was kind of silly. I went through all that schooling to become a teacher, and now I'm not doing that in my life. But you really have these formative experiences. And so when I first started teaching, I was 21, and I'm short. I'm not as short as you, but I was like, I'm not super tall. So I was 21. I kind of fit right in with the high schoolers, and I didn't have a classroom because I was new and the school was overcrowded. So they gave me this cart, and I pushed it through the hallways, and it was just ridiculous. People are slamming. It was like my whole life was on this cart. Everybody's papers, pencils, protractors. I taught math. So I have to go to other people's classrooms during their planning period and use their rooms. It was super awkward. Also, I didn't even have a classroom of my own, so I had all my stuff in this. We called it a cloffice, and it was where they kept the microwave, and people would come and burn their popcorn, and then my coat would smell like popcorn, and I would get like really mad. I was like 21. I was like, I'm not even fully frontal cortex.
Yeah.
Like, I am really mad about your burnt popcorn, and my clothes smell. So anyway, it was
Hold on. Did you ever have anyone come microwave salmon patties?
Did you?
No. Well, I love making salmon patties. And Jason used to microwave his food whenever he would work at Mr. Cool. And like the day after we'd have salmon patties, he was like totally ashamed.
No,
Because that's like,
you don't take salmon patties into work and heat them up.
he
No.
eventually
You're not
he
you're
started
not
being
gonna-
like, I'm not
Nobody
taking the
wants
salmon
to
patties.
be the fish guy.
Oh, but you felt like you
you're
had
the
to.
fish guy.
No,
it was your
like,
leftovers?
we always packed leftovers for his lunch.
Oh.
Yeah, and
and-
it just stinks.
Like,
It just stinks.
doesn't
You
want
don't
to be
want
the
to be
salmon
fish
patty guy.
How many times did you do it?
At least 10.
And then
At
finally
least
he's
10
like,
times.
I'm putting my foot down.
I stopped
Emily.
when they started calling me the fish guy. Yeah. No.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. So no salmon patties in your claws.
I mean, yes.
Closet.
Anyways, I push him. I think this is important. I push my cart around, and this is in this isn't in the 1900s. This was like in the 2000s, like right before iPhones, 2008, 2009. And nobody had iPhones quite yet, but they were starting to get Blackberries. And the things that I overheard in the hallways were so grotesque and vulgar. And I'm like, okay, some kids are saying them, but everybody's hearing it.
Right.
And I used to, and then they would sometimes see me and be like mortified because they saw that I heard, and
Right.
they would be embarrassed. But I mean, it was so vulgar. And I used to think if a parent would just come and stand against this wall for just a day, I think they would really consider if they should send their kid back or not.
Yeah.
And I think some people are like, well, we all went through, but it's not the same. It's worse. And
It's
then
different.
it got worse and worse. And then you throw the phones in there, and the kids are, even with the Blackberries, they're taking pictures of their tests, they're hiding it in their shirts. And it has gotten worse. I mean, the people that I've talked to. So I always had a heart for homeschool, partially because of that, partially because of what I felt like was a waste of time to a degree. And also because I feel like the school day is too long. And especially for a 5-year-old.
Right.
The bus comes at 8:30 in the morning and doesn't come back till 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I couldn't even do that.
And then your kid goes to bed at
And they've got
7:30
homework.
or
They have
yeah.
homework now.
Yeah.
The first graders, they got packets.
And I mean, I think you're like me. You recognize that it is such a privilege to get to stay home and homeschool your child, but you're also extremely passionate about it. Like,
Yeah, very passionate.
Yeah.
And I think it's something you think about. We've had a lot of discussions about this. It's a tricky thing, but it's something that you think about sort of from the beginning. It's something that if you're listening to this, let's say, and I know you've got teenagers that listen in. I've been with you with all these teenagers come up. If you're listening to this and you're a 17-year-old and you're like, I might want to homeschool someday. The decisions start kind of young. If you come out of college with $125,000 of debt, that's going to limit your choices.
Right.
And so there's a lot to think. It's tricky.
It is tricky.
It's really tricky. There's a lot to think about to sort of line your life up in a way. And then you make choices, right? Which is that we didn't buy one new piece of clothes. Everything was from the mom to mom sales. Have you been to those? Do they still have those?
We don't have mom to mom sales. We have something called Kentucky Kids Assignment.
Okay, it's called Mom to Mom Sale. It is like a mad dash. It is like you're going to like you're rushing in for like how the Black Friday sales used to be, and you could pay like an extra $1 for early bird, and it is like, I mean, everyone is lined up at the door, and it'll be like a church that's like filled with all these different like moms who've set up stuff.
Okay, they set up their own booth.
They set up their own booth.
Oh, fun!
And I mean, it was
like yard sale-esque.
Yeah, but it was so stressful.
Okay,
but like we
did you ever get in a fight?
Clothes. No, but you would grab stuff. I mean, it was like it was cutthroat. But that's what we did, you know. I mean, we put groceries back on the shelf, like, you know, those are the things. And we camped instead of going on, you know, an actual vacation. And you make some, you know, some of it. Sometimes you can't, but sometimes you can make the choices that help you get to the life you want to be in.
How did the whole like 1,000 hours outside thing? Like, how old were your kids when you birthed that concept?
Well, I was just a crummy mom. You weren't. You were a good mom from the beginning.
Well,
but
because of you, Ginny, Mom. I learned about the 1,000 Hours Outside movement when Oaks was a baby. And I was like, oh, that is so genius. And I'm telling you, you have shaped my motherhood. And I'm sure you get messages like that all the time, but it starts there. Like that peaks something. I don't know. Like it just gets you out there. And then that shifts your whole family perspective. Like, I really appreciate you. I was like, I'm tearing up. I was such a big fan of yours.
Go ahead. It's fine.
And when I went to Wild and Free after we started Really Very Crunchy, and you knew my name. I mentioned you in my first video.
Oh, yeah.
I was like such a fan of yours. And you like saying my name, I was like, she knows who I am. Because you have changed so many lives. And I really do think you set me on like a trajectory I like, you know? So I appreciate that.
Pretty sure you texted me immediately like, she said my name.
Jenny said Emily.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. That, like, that can make me smile. Even still.
Oh my goodness.
You on the spot, make you feel really awkward.
Should we say how weird it was? And I'm like, I came to visit you. I kind of invited myself. And Josh was like, you shouldn't do that.
Forest Friends wouldn't exist if it weren't for you, though. Aww. So you're welcome.
Well,
I had no idea who you were. So sorry.
Thanks. That's the typical story, actually. We're going on tour. Yes. We're going on tour, and that was the story. Was we reached out to this really cool touring company called Transparent. Hopefully that's what it's called. It is called. It's not called Transparent.
They've changed it out. TPR is what
Transparent Production. We always say TPR. Anyway, Josh reached out to them, and they asked around their whole office, and like, have you heard of 1,000 Hours Outside? And every single guy was like, nope, never heard of it. And every single woman was like, yep, I've heard of that. Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, it's pretty, I guess, gender specific. But weirdly, I did invite myself to come to your Forest Friends, and then because we're in Michigan and you're in Kentucky, and to me, like, Kentucky is not very far from Michigan. But then I looked it up, and it was 9 hours, and I was like, oh.
It is amazing to me how you
came for a day.
You and your family, you'll just like, oh yeah, it's the other side of the country. Let's go for a drive.
Well, why not? It's not the other. It's a day's drive.
Yeah, but I've heard some of your stories of how far you've driven.
Kites.
And then not that long after, we were coming into Nashville, and I was like, oh, there's a place that the Morrows could stay, and like the kids really connected.
Yeah.
Which is that doesn't always happen.
Right.
The kids really connected. So I was like, and our kids are huge fans of yours, like the both of you. So like it was a really cool, it meshed. So we were coming and not that far from you. And I was like, we should invite them. There's extra space for them to stay. Josh was like, do not do that. They're going to think you're so weird. And I always just do what I want anyway.
Yeah.
So I just did it. And you didn't think I was weird, and you came.
It's because we're weird. So
it's
probably right.
You had to sleep in a spot that was like really hot.
Oh yeah, I was like, is that where I was right under the heater?
Yeah. Jason didn't sleep at all. That was horrible.
It was 4 bunk beds, right?
Yeah.
And then I was right under the heater, and it all night is like radiating heat onto my body. And I think I came out.
Yeah, but now we've gotten together like 4 or 5 times in Nashville. Yeah.
I came out burned.
Well, we stay in the same house. It feels like a kid's sleepover, but with families.
Yeah. Well, it's so cute because Alder, I mean, I think he doesn't really understand our relationship. So when we were coming to see you guys this time, for the listener, we are currently at a house in Nashville right now. Yep. And Alder was like, so we're going to, not Winnie, our dog. Your daughter's name is Winnie. well, our dog is dead. So I was like, no, not Winnie, our dog. He's like, Winnie, our cousin-ish? And I was like, friend? Yeah, just friend, but sure, whatever. So like it feels like that family dynamic, just like everybody getting together and everybody's comfortable and everybody's eating each other's food and
Food is so good.
Yeah, it's a good time.
That's good food. Yeah, it's really special.
Yeah.
And those are the good parts of the internet.
Yeah.
Because I think they really do foster relationships with people who look at the world the same way that you do, and they foster relationships with people that can help you grow and become a better person. And
then there's Reddit.
Reddit is rough. Reddit.
So one thing I was going to ask you, because I do feel like I was watching you this last year when we went to Wild and Free, you don't sit in the speaker section. You like just come sit with the normies.
I with you.
Well,
I've sat in the speaker section before.
Among the normies.
Oh,
you have?
My friend is over there, so we're going to sit
call
together.
the rest of the crowd normies.
I was in the normie section.
I am a normie.
And then but I saw you. You're like giving out your personal cell phone number to multiple people.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Apparently, at one of those things, I gave out my cell phone number because I was speaking and I put on this wizard's hat, and then a bunch of people took my picture. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to get a picture unless someone sends it. So I said it out loud while I was speaking, and apparently they kept it in the video that goes out to all of the members. So then people have texted me from that. So I was like, well, I mean, whatever. It's already out there, I guess.
Watching that and thinking, she
I'm
would
gonna
really...
text,
and they do.
I'm going to save that.
Yeah, it happened.
So
Stole my thunder there. Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean
That was
to.
my joke.
I was like...
That's my joke.
We'll credit you.
But
It's
Jason,
fine. I don't... Yeah,
Jason
thank you for
gets-
that. Yeah, I
Jason
appreciate
gets
that.
on to me for sharing my number. He's like, you can't do that, Emily.
No.
So one time this
Okay,
one
what do
girl
you think's going to
Crazy
happen?
people.
doxed
Death.
you somehow.
Oh, gosh.
He scares me into it. And then he, like, one time this one girl wanted some kombucha SCOBY from me. I met her out in public. She's like, I'm such a fan. She might be listening to this podcast. Anyway, she wanted a SCOBY. And I was like, yeah, meet me here. And she's like, give me your number.
Already shady circumstances. Like,
Yeah, but like, do murderers know about SCOBYs?
oh, yeah. They have a whole bunch of them on their shelves in the
I
back
feel like
room.
it is a little creepy. Like, have you ever touched a SCOBY?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a little murdery. But
These are a little...
they're a little
But that's not my question. My question is would a murderer, someone who is like out taking lives, would they know about the crunchy SCOBY to make kombucha?
SCOBY serial killer.
I imagine it depends on the
Remember the
murderer.
title?
You know
the
how
episode.
there's like Amish romance novels?
Mhm.
We should write crunchy mystery books.
Crunchy crime novels.
Yeah.
Ooh.
There's probably
That's
a
good.
market for that.
Yeah, there's
Okay,
about
anyway,
a market of 10 people.
Jason made me download an app to get a fake cell phone number to text with this girl. But then, like, I kept it on there, and she texted me a couple times.
But you never checked.
But I never check, and now I've deleted it, and so I don't know. Like, she could be out there thinking I'm ignoring her, but
As
I
she
used
should
a
be.
fake cell
As
phone
she should
number
be.
so that because Jason's like, she's gonna dox you, like this random sweet girl that totally isn't.
So this
going
is your
to-
public apology to her.
Anyway, yes, but I definitely, whenever you gave out your, like, I heard you do it multiple times. I was like, oh no, she's giving out her.
We're
getting out her
surprised,
cell
we're
phone number.
surprised you're here right now. Honestly. Like, the way you
It
live
appears
your
to not
life
be
is-
as dangerous as you maybe thought it was.
Maybe.
But I want to know what made you so nice. Like, and I see you going to all the makers market. Seriously, you go and you actually buy the things. You go to the
I don't
band
really-
table and you buy the merch.
That's something I really don't
You guys are
understand.
so nice.
It's that I don't have that in me.
You're
This-
very generous too. Like, just giving, just give. And like, without worrying about yourself. Like, what do you think? Is there a moment? Was there someone you look up to who was that way? Are you just naturally that way?
His name is Jesus. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I didn't say I didn't have that in me. That's not what I was saying. Come on.
Biblical. I believe it. I believe it in my core. I believed it since I was really young. That there are biblical promises that are spiritual laws, is what I would say that they are. Like natural laws, a spiritual law, it works. It works whether you believe it's going to work or not. And it says that the generous will prosper, and it says that You should cast your bread upon the water, for in many days it will return to you. And it says that you refresh yourself by refreshing others. And I believe that in my core and have, decades of experience. It's always true. And it's counterculture and it doesn't make any logical sense, but it's true. But I will tell you that in one of those Maker's Marts, I bought something for you, actually.
Aww.
And I didn't give it to you because it turned out that it was really expensive. And I didn't know that it was because it was like this leather journal with a mushroom on it. And I was like, oh, Emily would think this is cute. So I got it. And then I was like, probably $12, I don't know. But as I was paying, everybody was talking. There's people in there. It's like a madhouse. It's kind of like those mom to mom sales. Everyone's like rushing in.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on. Everybody's talking. And so then later on, Josh texted and he was like, how come you spent like $172 at this store? And I was like, I don't even know how much it was. I just hit a button. And the one little, I still have it in my closet. It was $50.
You told that this is too nice
she really
for her.
This $50 leather journal with a mushroom on it.
I have a gift that I didn't spend $50 on, but I bought you, and I still have it. It's a little peg person wearing a cloak because of our video together. It's so cute, and I ordered it like right away when you left, and I keep forgetting.
You should
to bring
explain
it to
what the video is if you're gonna.
There's a video where we're all wearing cloaks, and it's like the 1,000 Hours Outside Council, and we're deciding whether the time spent is worthy of counting towards your 1,000 hours.
There's a lot of questions that come in about that.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that.
Like, what counts as being outside? Does this?
It
There's windows.
it really seems like it should be pretty obvious. Honestly,
It does. But I mean, I get
Isn't the
many
prerequisite of
The tent,
just
that's a
outside of a
big-
building?
Yeah, but there's all these things. Like, people will be like, and they really send them in.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ones that was in the video was, I like to ride horses and I ride in an indoor arena, but often the doors are open. Can I count that?
Those are
It is an
cold. It's
outdoor
cold.
activity,
There's
but it's
dirt
not
on the ground.
outside.
But there's
Yeah.
dirt.
There's a structure.
Or the people be like, I swim in this pool and the whole ceiling, it's indoors, but the whole ceiling is windows.
So
Yeah,
is-
to me,
Am
that's
I-
not.
am
No,
I
you're
outside?
protected.
Mm.
See, can you just forward those emails to me and I'll answer them for you? I love that kind of stuff. I will be the
There's a
definitive
lot.
answer.
There's a lot that come in. Yeah, that's why we had to form the council. Yeah, that's what we did.
But there is a big controversy over the tents.
The tent
That
is the
seems
biggest
like
one.
the biggest.
If you're sleeping, and I just don't really understand. First of all, you're inside. You're not outside. If you're in a tent, you're inside.
Yeah.
It's cold
Right.
though. Like there are so many. You're still affected
Well, so is a
by
house
the
without
elements.
heat. I mean, it's still cold, but you're not
You are
outside.
inside. And
Okay, but
And
have
you're
you ever
sleeping.
been in a tent
RV?
when
Is it
Jason
an RV?
has really bad gas and it's flooding?
That
and
doesn't
you
make it
can't-
outside. You just have to
No.
go outside.
no, I have not been in a tent with Jason.
It
Very bad
feels
guess.
like you're in the wilderness.
In fact, I've never been in a tent with Jason. Okay. Okay. Well,
It's
here
fair.
we go.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that
But you feel like if you're unconscious, if you're asleep, those
I mean,
hours.
the whole point is that you're supposed to be interacting with nature, and I think
I'm gonna take a wild guess.
All right.
And think that it doesn't matter to you that much if people count it or don't count it because
I
the
don't care.
point is they're
Just
getting
get outside.
outside, right?
I mean, I never thought anybody would even do it. That's where I'm at. I get all these. I'm getting tagged in these things in languages I don't even know what they are.
That's
Oh,
cool.
so
I didn't know anybody
That's
would do it.
really
I was
cool.
just, you asked at the very beginning, I was a very crummy mother. I was like really excited to be a mom. So excited. And then when our first was born and I had the induction and I had failure to progress, and then they tried to break my waters, and while they were doing it, they were hooking his head with the hook, and he came out with all these scabs. And then he just, I was planning on doing a schedule. That's what all my friends were doing. That's what I'm saying. You're very influenced, I think, by like what your friends are doing, because we're sort of missing that generational wisdom piece. And so all my friends did a schedule, and it was like every 2 hours, and then they nurse, and then they do this, and then, it just didn't work. And he just wanted to nurse all the time, and he was like humongous, and he was just like this big baby. He grew up to be this tall teenager, and I just felt like from dawn to dusk and through the night, I was failing.
But that was self-imposed. You weren't actually a crummy mom.
Well, he was crying all the time. Like I felt like I was.
I mean, that's how my first one was too. And I don't feel like I was a crummy mom, but I feel like I wasn't, like, I didn't know what to do. And I was just constantly anxious and
yeah.
like, maybe I was failing him in some ways, but I feel like if you're trying your best, then you're not crummy. And I don't see it in you to not be trying your best. Like, I don't see that.
I think that I was trying my best and still felt like I was failing. And I think that's the weird transition. It's like you come out of life, depending on when you have a child, like maybe you come out of high school and you did a great job in high school, you have a baby, you were doing great. And then you just all of a sudden are in the spot where you don't know what you're doing. Or for me, I had a career, a small career, short career, as a teacher. And then I was like, I felt like I did pretty good at it. And then all of a sudden it's just like this baby and I don't know what to do with him. And these days are so long. And Josh was out of the house for 10 hours for work. I think that's common, right? You got your 8-hour workday, you got your commute. And I hated it. I hated it. And then we had a couple right back to back and it was just like that multiply, but it was hard even with just the one. And I didn't know how to pass the time. That was a big thing. Like 10 hours, it's a long time to fill. We would go to the library and you come home and it's 11 a.m. And I'm like, I still have 8 more hours. I would call Josh. How much longer? Can you come home? He's like, it's not even lunch yet. And I just felt I didn't even want to go to bed because I felt like I don't even want to wake up the next morning. It was a dark spot for me. And going outside, that's it. And staying changed the whole thing.
Wow.
It changed the whole thing. I went one day, it was in 2011. I went from 9 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon with a friend from MOPS. It was her idea. I thought it was a ridiculous idea. This is the worst idea ever. What are the kids going to do from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon?
She set that time. She's like,
yeah,
let's
she
go.
had read Charlotte Mason. I didn't know who Charlotte Mason was.
Okay.
So we knew we were going to homeschool. The story is we were in MOPS because I was doing all these programs and I actually really like MOPS. It's called MomCo now. And they would take your kids for 2 hours and you'd sit and talk with these other moms. Well, my kids would never stay in the class. So I always had crying babies with me, but I did make friends. These were the ones whose husbands were supposed to sew up my hoo-ha. So there was that, but they didn't do that, thank goodness. But these were the friends from that time period of my life, and the one knew she was going to homeschool, but her oldest was 1 year older than my oldest, so she started research. I was like, this is great. You can share with me all the research. And so she comes in one day and she goes just like this. Charlotte Mason says that kids should be outside for 4 to 6 hours a day whenever the weather is tolerable. I was like, that's ridiculous. I didn't know who Charlotte Mason was. I'd never heard of Charlotte Mason. Do you know she's from the 1800s?
Yeah.
She didn't
She
throw
thinks
out.
she is.
She didn't throw out that tidbit of information. It was like years later.
She also didn't have children of her own.
Yeah,
There's
there
a
was
whole thing.
nannies. There's a whole thing if you read the books. I didn't know any of that. Charlotte, I have friends named Charlotte. So I was like, oh, it's probably some current person who says kids should be out. And I just remember thinking that's the most absurd idea. I didn't say it because that would be rude, right? But I was like, oh, And then she goes, and I think because I responded in that way, she was like, we should do it. And I was like, oh gosh, no, we shouldn't do that. I'm like, have you been to these shorter programs? They're a disaster. And then they only take up this little bit of time. I'm like, the kids are going to cry the whole time. It was the best day of my life. It was the first good day I had as a mom.
Wow.
3 years in. First good day I had as a mom completely changed my life because everyone left changed in that 4-hour period of time. I went and I sat on a blanket under the sun and it was beautiful. It was the fall in Michigan and the toddlers and preschoolers ran around. We weren't near like a parking lot or anything. It was like this grassy spot. We each held our babies. The babies would nurse and sleep when they wanted. And we had conversation. And when we left, it was like, everybody feels good. Everybody. And it changed my life. And a couple years later, I started writing about it because we changed the way that we lived. And it changed me first. And then it really quickly was changing our kids. They're sleeping better. They're eating better. They're getting along. They're more creative. And then I've gone down a rabbit hole of reading, hundreds of books really at this point about the benefits of getting outside for all of us. And I thought, well, I'm going to write about it. It was back when blogs were bigger. And like for 3 years, mostly people made fun of it. Even my friends, and they were like, well, that's really stupid. Who would keep track of the amount of time they spend outside? Why would you do that? Nobody does that.
So what's the timeline here where you actually said, this is 1,000 hours outside? Was this the 2 years later?
Yeah. So 2011 in the fall, we went outside for this day that changed my life. In 2013, started writing about it.
Okay.
And did the math. I was a math teacher. So I'd done the math based off of the statistic that kids were outside for 4 to 7 minutes a day, but on screens for 4 to 7 hours. That was in a
4 to 7 minutes?
4 to 7 minutes. It's in a Dr. Scott Sampson book called How to Raise a Wild Child.
Whoa.
4 to 7 minutes outside, 4 to 7 hours on screens. average American child, and that kids were on screens for about 1,200 hours a year. And I knew that that's about how much time we were getting outside because we were doing that Charlotte Mason thing. So we were outside like 18 to 20 hours a week. We were going 3 days with a little group of friends, 4 to 6 hours. And so I knew we were outside for about 18 to 20 hours a week, and it matched. And I thought, not that we're against screens, but I thought if all of that time would have gone to screens, how much less full would our life be? And I thought, well, I'm just going to write about it. And I called it 1,000 hours outside because that's a little catchier than 1,200 hours outside.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then for years, people were like, dumb, stupid.
No.
Yeah, for years. And then finally there was 3 people that did it. One, and I know who they are. One of them lives in Georgia, and one of them lives in Virginia, and one of them lives in Canada. 3 people did it the same year with me. Just on Instagram. Like I was using my own hashtag, and then all of a sudden, like some other people's post said 1,000 hours outside.
Wow.
I was like, huh.
Oh.
So that would have been 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And now people are doing it all over the world.
That's
really,
amazing. Do you
really
have
cool.
any idea how many families have taken on the challenge? And
So we have these tracker sheets that we have that people can download. And so we have estimated that it's in the millions of children who have participated.
Wow.
that is
Based on the
so
amount of tracker
cool,
sheets
Ginny.
that have been downloaded.
That is
That's
so
really
cool.
cool.
And I mean,
And some people message you asking how to use a tracker sheet, so I'm going to save. You just fill in you just
color it.
color the little spot. Each
Yeah.
little open spot,
And it can
is an
represent what
hour.
you want.
Yeah.
If you say, look, that's too, and I always say it's not, the number actually is research backed. Angela Hanscom talks about it in her book, Balanced and Barefoot. And it's also in line with Charlotte Mason, but that about 3 hours a day is how much kids should be outside. And it's backed by even like the way that their eyes form, the 3 hours a day. That's in Nadine Artemis talks about that. But also, that's how much kids used to be outside, at least a minimum, because they had more recess and they'd walk to school. That was very
Chores.
common.
They
Yeah,
had
3 to 4
chores
hours a day outside was like actually really common
Sure.
for a long period of humanity up until the last couple decades. So the number is research backed. However, if you want to take that sheet and say every space is 30 minutes and you're going outside for 500 hours, that's still way more.
Better than nothing. Yeah.
And it's still way more than what the average kid is getting. And it's still a worthy use of your time. And it still will enhance your life tremendously.
So how many hours do you think you spend outside every
only
year?
1,000. I don't really want to be outside.
You're like, I'm getting my 1,000 in.
I didn't do it because like I'm going to make an Instagram challenge. I mean, I wasn't even on Instagram. Like I didn't do it for any reason except that I was flailing and failing and desperate. And it
You're
changed
just
my
in
life.
a survival mode.
I was surviving, and it completely changed my life. And it wasn't, I mean, that was a period of time when like I said, we were putting groceries back. Like I would run my groceries through and be like, I can't afford those blueberries. I mean, this is a period of time when like we weren't going to Moab or we weren't doing elaborate trips to Hawaii or,
Because a lot of
doing
people
anything.
only see that. They don't know that there's a story behind that.
Yeah, it's
And
just
so-
like, what were we doing? We were going to the parks in our area. We were going to the zoo. We were going to the nature center. And that was it. And it was so transformative.
That's amazing.
And our kids now they're really thriving. They're thriving. And I love having teenagers. We don't have there's no like of this teenage fighting stuff that everyone talked about. Like, it's just great.
Yeah, I see them. I see how respectful they are to you and like how great they are with the kids and the way you guys talk. You can just see that there's like a deeper trust and there's a true relationship there. One thing I love about your book that's coming out is you talk about how your kids, they love reading. Like
voracious readers.
voracious. Yeah. Sorry.
Good word.
Well, it would be a good word if I knew how to say it. They're voracious readers, but they didn't really start reading until they were like 7. And there's like all this pressure to get your kids to read and start early and then, cram the knowledge in. But you kind of have a different approach. And I love it because I thought Oaks was going to be a super early reader. He knew his letters at 2 years old. And like we had this alphabet puzzle that we did all the time and he knew what the letters were. But it didn't translate into reading. And he is 7 now, and he's just now like really reading. But I felt so discouraged until I like see your kids. And I'm like, it's okay. Because
They all have
tell
books
us about it. Yeah.
They all have books.
I know, they're like
we
carrying around
all have books we're carrying around.
books.
Yeah, Vivian's reading one called, it's a line from what is it? It's about music. It's about the psychology of music. It's called I Heard There Was a Secret Chord. Ooh, isn't that a good title?
That's a good title.
I heard there was, and Brooklyn's reading Warrior Cats. There's like a million of those.
Yeah.
And the cats, and they're always dying. Her favorite character is always dying. She like this. Anyway, everyone's walking around with books. You know, this is another thing. It's just a weird thing to sit here because like my journey really has been one of failures. That's all that it is. You know, I was like, oh, I did that wrong. Or, you know, and here I sit. So it's kind of this bizarre thing. But as far as homeschooling goes, I wanted to be the mom that like checked off all the boxes. That's what I wanted to be. I felt comfortable with that. I felt comfortable because I was a teacher. I'm like, I could go print out the standards for kindergarten and they were all sorts of things. It was like distinguish between yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Like I knew them. You know, I can print them out. I'm going to check them off. And then by the time we hit that, I was like, well, our oldest we had 3 other younger kids. And there was a lot of other circumstances there that made it be so that I couldn't do it how I wanted to do it in the way that made me feel the most comfortable. And so the only thing that I could do really was to change my philosophy. And I did it and I was scared. I was like, the philosophy, it comes from John Holt, it comes from John Taylor Gatto. There's a lot of other people that kind of went before that in Waldorf, like the Rudolf Steiner, you know, they're talking about how there's a biology component here that there are signals that show that a kid is ready to read. Like, so in the Steiner schools, it's like you have to be able to reach over. Here we go.
Yeah.
And touch your ear. And yeah, so we can all do it. But if you have a 3-year-old at home and you ask them to do it, they cannot. They're
I'm
not
ready.
Yeah, you're ready. They can't. And he would say that these certain changes signify that the internal organs have fully formed. Your eyes, your ears, when the adult teeth start coming in, that's another signal. The eyes, the ears have fully formed. And so you're ready. And they do this in Finland. There was a lot of things out there that I didn't know about, but started to research simply because I couldn't do it the way I really wanted to do it. And because of my ineptitude, I learned a lot. And that's why I'm here, because I had to wait. There was no way for me to take a 5-year-old through kindergarten curriculum with 3 younger kids. And Josh had also lost his job. And at the same time, we were renting a house and the lady wasn't paying the mortgage. We lost the home. So it was a confluence of things. And looking back, it was the best thing that could have happened, because what I learned is that kids are biologically designed to self-educate, and that at the right time, they learn it so fast. And in fact, with our youngest, I didn't even teach her to read at all. Nothing. We did not do one lesson. There's a book by John Holt. It's called Learning All the Time: How Young Kids Learn to Read, Write, Investigate the World, and Do Math Without Being Taught. I was like, no.
I see that a little
sounds like
in
my kind of
Alder.
homeschool.
Well, I see that a little in Alder. We haven't done any formal lessons, but he is like writing specific letters.
He is brilliant.
And he
He's verbal. No, I am telling you.
I think he's great, but he's my kid.
I'm an outside perspective, right? To spend time around this kid who is really articulate, who is funny, you know, who just like knows what's going on. And you're like, no, that kid is so smart. And I think what happens, and I know I have friends, you know, they've been in a situation where the 5-year-old is smart, and they're all smart, right? They're all geniuses in their own way. There's tests that say that these kids are like creative geniuses, and they go to a class and they're not ready. Their eyes are not formed. Their ears are not fully formed. They can't hear the difference between a B and a D and a P and they can't even hear it.
And that doesn't mean they're not brilliant.
They get thrown in remedial.
Yeah.
Right.
And that tag stays with you. And I guess that stays with you the rest of your
Jason
life.
and I were both in remedial math, actually.
That has stayed with me.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Since. She brings it up every other week.
I think maybe that was also something that was deeply ingrained in me, because I had all of these students that would come to me. And I taught because I was new. So they would give, like the teachers who have been there the longest, they want calculus. They want the kids that are like really studying, the parents that are on top of things. And so if you're a new teacher, you get basic math. Like that's the class you get. The kids all have IEPs and 504s, and they need a little extra help. And I actually loved that. I loved being in those situations, because my goal was really to try and change that narrative. That you're not bad at math. Maybe you got lost at fractions, or there was 1 week you missed because you were sick, or you have a hard home life and like you had a year where you couldn't ask the questions or whatever happened. And a lot of times I feel like they did change. They did change their view of themselves, but those labels can last for so long.
That's something that has always been a part of me. I've always felt that what you just articulated was that I don't ever think I was, you can dispute this, I don't ever think I was ever bad at math. I think along the way, I got behind somewhere. Something didn't make sense. And then from there till now,
it builds on each other.
Yes.
From there till now, I've always been, quote, bad at math.
But you're not.
But I'm still better than Emily right now. But
we can pull out our ACT scores if we want to.
let's not. We've already done that.
But isn't that sad though? It stays with you.
You just want to go to the scores, these tests, the people
that are like decades old.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like that number.
that are built to make me feel like a failure. Thanks. See where you stand.
You've been quantified.
Yeah. Thanks for quantifying me.
So I talked to this lady, Dr. Carla Hannaford. She wrote a book that changed my life. It's called Smart Moves, Why Learning is Not All in Your Head. It's about movement. And she's in her 80s. And she told me, I've interviewed her, and she said, one of the first things she said was, I didn't learn to read until I was 10 years old.
Wow.
And I actually think like it was one of the first things she said. So it's a big deal to her, right? Mm-hmm. She's in her 80s. It's like 70 years later. And she said when she was a kid, it didn't really matter that much. But still, like she noticed. She was 10. Can you imagine? That's 4th grade. Can you imagine a 3rd grader or 4th grader can't read?
Teachers are definitely stressing.
And
worrying.
now she's a PhD.
Wow.
Now
Well,
it would be a
parents
big
are
deal.
shamed
Yeah,
if
parents
it's,
are
if it's not a
It
certain.
would be a big deal if a 1st grader wasn't reading. That's 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And she was 10, and she's a PhD, and she's brilliant. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. I think there's just more freedom there than we realize.
But it takes so much confidence in yourself to be like, it's okay. There's a lady who has come to my Forest Friends group a couple times, and her son was like that. He didn't learn to read until he was 10, but she was totally cool with it. Like just sitting in the circle, she's like, yeah, he didn't really pick it up, didn't really understand it, didn't really show an interest, but he like crafts all this stuff out of leather.
He seems like a brilliant kid.
Yeah, he's like super smart, does all these really creative things, and is totally self-sufficient.
And reads.
Reads now. He's 13 and it's fine. Like it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect him. And I think that's a huge piece in the whole education thing is if the child isn't ready, then why are we forcing it? Because like a preschooler, you're going to have to like go over it and over it and over it and over it. But didn't you say Winnie like did an entire math curriculum in one day?
In one day, and you feel like you're failing. You're behind. I was behind. I had a book due. This book, actually, the book that's coming out, I had a book due. So what do you're working. I think that's a tricky part. I went through a phase where I didn't work as a mom, or I worked a little bit. I taught piano lessons. I did some side things, and then now I work a little bit more as a mom. So she's around and she's playing, and I'm doing some writing, and I was feeling guilty, like we're a little bit behind on these math lessons. And she grabbed the book, and from one day to the next, she finished the entire thing.
Wow.
She sat next to me. She'd ask questions when she had them. How young children learn to read, write, investigate the world, and do math on their own. They ask the questions that they need to know the answers to. And if you think about a young child like a baby, you're not giving them any instruction on how to roll over. For your neurotypical kid, right? They're going to develop along a timeline. Mm-hmm. They just do it, and you support them and you cheer them on. And it really is the same thing. And I guess I would say that as a parent, I think we owe it to ourselves to do a little bit of research and to do a little bit of reading about educational philosophy, because it matters. It matters for the long term. And in these books that I'm talking about, like if I were to recommend top 3, I would say this John Holt, Learning All the Time. it is like 80 pages. I mean, it's going to take you a day to read it. It's not very long. John Taylor Gatto has one called Dumbing Us Down, The Hidden Curriculum of Compulsory Education. So he's got some great titles. Same thing. It's like 6 chapters. It's like, what are kids really learning at school? Well, in some cases, they're learning apathy. They're learning to wait for someone to tell them what to do. This is a big deal.
Yeah, that is.
Because we're in an entrepreneurial world right now. People have a lot of different jobs. You're not waiting for someone to tell you what to do. You're packing up all
do
this
what Jason
equipment.
tells me.
So that one, and then I think either
But
that
I was traditionally schooled, so
it's tricky, isn't it? Tricky to it's scary, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's if you have 12 years of life and then you go on into higher education, you have 16 years of life or 20 years of life where your whole life is mapped out for you, and then all of a sudden it's not.
right.
Are you ready for that? So those 2 books, and then I think either Smart Moves or Balanced and Barefoot by Angela Hanscom, those are ones about movement and movement and being outdoors. It helps the brain develop, but it's just completely been squashed.
But mostly, the most important book you need to buy is coming out in May, and it is.
Is it for pre-order yet?
Is it
It's up for pre-order.
It
Okay.
is. Oh,
Yeah.
go pre-order
And it's
it
got
right
a really,
now.
really cool cover.
Really?
It's
Oh,
really
cool.
cool looking.
I don't think I've seen it.
It's a really-
I don't
it's a
think I've
really, really cool.
pre-ordered
Well,
it.
we will definitely. That'll be the first link in the description for the pre-order for that book.
Homeschooling, you're doing it right just by doing it. By Ginny Yurich. This is actually your 8th book. 8th.
Of 3 of my books are called 1,000 Hours Outside. That's what I'm saying. We don't really know what we're doing. We're just flailing through the whole thing somehow.
But I loved
Here I
your book
sit.
Until the Streetlights Come On. So if you need to read something by Jenny, go check that one out now and then get ready to read her book in May. It's incredible. It's a pep talk for all the homeschooling parents, for all parents, really. It is eye-opening and I loved it so much. I'm so excited for it to be in the hands of readers. Oh.
I have something to say when you're done with your
Okay.
thing. Is all.
We're doing hand signals.
Yeah.
And I'm just really excited for you.
Thank you.
There were other things I was going to ask you about, but I don't want to spoil the whole book for everybody else. So definitely check it out. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Jason?
Well, I just don't think that we should go the rest to end the podcast without for at least a minute or 2 talking about the tour coming up in February. I know you mentioned it earlier, but it is February 21st through the 28th at various locations. You can find 1000hours.com/tour. 1000hoursoutside.com/tour or reallyverycrunchy.com/tour. I wonder which one they're going to click on.
We'll put your link first.
But I don't know. Today we were.
It doesn't matter who you buy the tickets from.
No. We're
No,
here.
it
We're here
absolutely
filming.
doesn't. Yeah.
That's why we're here together.
Yeah, that
We're
was
here
it's
filming
been
for
such a
it.
fun day, a very
It's
busy
a
day.
really, really cool group of people.
Yeah.
That are involved. Dustin
think
and
it's
Sarah
really-
are phenomenal. They have been, I have admired them since I first met them.
Then they're the ones that are doing the music.
They're doing the music This Way Home.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
going to be great. Going to be funny. Lots of laughs. Lots of inspiration.
Lots of learning.
I mean, can't you hear it in Jenny's voice? She is so inspiring. There's just there's a way you talk. I mean,
Yeah, I didn't even
Did you tear
I'm
up?
just soaring over here. I'm like, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay.
Everyone is nervous that Jason's going to like the tour. It's like the big concern.
Yeah.
Well, our kids are like, if Jason likes it, we'll get to do it again because they're excited
Oh,
about it.
well,
They're like, if we can get to the level where we have a tour bus, we will have hit the big time.
Listen, if we get to the level of tour bus, I'll do it all year round. We'll just make this a 365 thing,
so be sure you check out the tour, the
Which
book.
I'll link to the promotional video. It should be out by the time this episode's out.
Oh, fun.
And so we'll have that linked as well. There's a lot of links that are going to go in this, but
Put her book first.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pre-order.
Well, thank you, Jenny, so much for being our first ever guest. And we
first
would love to
guest
have you back
ever.
on whenever the book comes
What
out.
if you're our
That'd be amazing.
only guest
we'll
ever?
only have Jenny on.
We're just every month or so, we just have Ginny on.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Well, you read a ton of books, and so
I'm jealous of how you can retain the information.
I know. I'm really jealous of that
Well,
as
do you
well.
know, it's not a, I go through each book. People ask about this actually a lot. I go through each book really 4 times. I read a book. So if I'm prepping for a podcast, and even on books that I'm not prepping for a podcast, but I like, and I want to retain the information, I type up notes. I write in the book. So the first time I go through, I write, then I type up the notes. And if it's a podcast, then I go through it a third time because we converse about it, and then I edit.
Wow.
It's 4 times through the material. So what a cool thing. I just want to say how much I admire the both of you. It has been like the honor of my life to be friends. I forced my way into it.
We're so glad you did.
I did. And I feel like Josh should say that I was right to do it because he was like, they're going to think you're weird. And I was like, I'm just doing it anyway.
But we're weird. So it works.
And it has just been an honor. I adore your kids. We adore the both of you. We're in that spot where like you're younger than us. And so you're like in that middle spot between us and our older kids who are just like, oh, we get to hang out with the crunchy moms. They love and the crunchy dad. They love your videos. They're laughing all the time. They've been inspired even work-wise and entrepreneurship. So, and all the crunchy stuff. Like I really loved your book. I love the stories about the rainbow cake and the getting bit in the butt. And we were talking about this earlier, that in some books you read stories and you don't remember them, but like your book had the stories I really remember about the soap and like, and you feel that because it's a really, really hard time, I think, to be a parent. There's a lot of conflicting information. People get up in arms about stuff. And I love that the message was relationships are more important. Is really a very, very touching book. You did a wonderful job with it. So maybe that should be the first link.
No.
It'll be the last link, but it'll be there.
But thank you, Jenny. And thanks so much for coming on. This was so much fun.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.